Students for Success is a youth education, health promotions, and prevention program. Staff include Abraham Broncho, Director, Sonia Oberly, Project Director, and Sherry Green, Community Assessment Coordinator. Strategic Prevention Framework Partnership for Success, SPF PFS. So what is SPF PFS? It is an effort to address the problem of alcohol and marijuana use among Native American children and youth ages 9 to 20 years on our rural reservation. The Students for Success program is within the Education Department and will be the implementing agency for the tribe. So let's brainstorm. Discussion on strategies, stakeholders plus community equal action for change. We're here to ask you your questions, your concerns, and your comments. So we're going to be talking about strategies, and strategies are careful plan or method, or think of it as a roadmap or a game plan, a blueprint for the project. So say for instance we're looking at this picture and the goal here is to catch fish. The strategies could include the type of fishing pole, the type of fishing line, the type of bait used, the type of hook used, and those are the different strategies that they would use to catch fish. Now the dimensions could be include where they're fishing at. It could be up at Mans Lake or Winchester or up at Orfino. So those are the different places that we're going to be seeking as where would we go in the community, those type of things as well. So again, we're all going to look at the different stages, but again we'll be discussing strategies is to get to the point of what it is that we're seeking information from you. A community readiness is based on the community's truth. The perception of a community is their reality, and the two truths may be different. The CRM scores are based on the truth and the community readiness. Successful intervention begins with community. So the purpose of the community readiness is it's a model that provides communities, organizations, social networks with stages of readiness for the development of practical strategies that have a higher success and sustainability and are more cost effective. So what exactly is the community readiness model? It's a model to mobilize the community and organizational social network toward health changes. CRM has 9 stages of readiness, has 6 dimensions or aspects of a community, and each dimension has a stage of readiness associated with it. Each readiness stage has specific interventions that work most effectively for that stage, and the CRM integrates the local resource and culture in the prevention process. So dimensions of community readiness. So each of the dimensions is scored and evaluated. The result is suggested strategies to move forward and initiate change, the application of community readiness or developing and applying prevention single strategies based on readiness of dimensions. Dimensions are community efforts, programs, activities, and policies, community knowledge of the efforts, leadership includes appointed leaders and informal community members, community climate, community knowledge about the issue, and resources for prevention efforts, which is people, time, money, and space. The process for using a community readiness model. So if you look here, it says identify the issue. And the issue we're addressing is the problem of alcohol and marijuana use among Native American children, youth ages 9 to 20 years old. The community is defined as our rural reservation, conduct key responder interviews, which were done in different sectors of the community, and I'll discuss that in the next slide. Score to determine stages of readiness, and those were all based and scored through the interview process. And we are now in the part where we're going to conduct workshops and develop strategies with your input. What that will eventually do is create an implementation action plan. So who was interviewed? There was different people in the community known as sectors. Under those sectors, we had recreation, social services, education, government, elected officials, housing, health, community. Conducting community readiness interviews. So thinking about that, there was about 20 to 35 questions. Interviews could last anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes. All document responses were done as accurately as possible, including nonverbal cues. There were no right or wrong answers, no good or bad interviews, all provided essential information. So say for instance, one of the areas that we looked at was resources for prevention efforts. The question may have read, are you aware of any proposals or action plans that have been written to support substance use prevention in your community? So this is the scoring or the stages of the community readiness model. So as you see, there are stages 1 through 9, with 1 being no awareness, to the high, and to number 9, which is the high level of community ownership. So what happens here is when those interviews were done, they were scored based upon this stage right here. What that eventually did, based upon where they scored, it created strategies. Sometimes they were low and sometimes they were high, but they also were clearly put based upon what the community was ready for, as far as what they were interested in knowing about or not knowing about. So again, stages of the community readiness model. Say for instance, they scored at a number 5, which is preparation. So planning is becoming more focused, general information is being collected on issue, and the leadership, either formal or informal or both, is becoming identified. Community climate offers limited support. So Dimension A. Dimension A is the community efforts. The efforts, programs, activities, policies, etc. Currently policies existing in the community. The goal here is to raise awareness with concrete ideals. So in this we have strategies. The first strategy says introduce information through presentations and media. The second is focus on reducing stigma and raising general awareness. 3 is visit and invest community leaders in the cause, review existing efforts in the community to determine who the populations of focus are and consider the degree of success of the efforts. 4 was conduct local focus group to discuss substance use prevention and related issues and develop some basic activities. 5 was increase media exposure through radio and television public service announcements. So when we're looking at these as far as strategies, when we talk about increased media exposure through radio and television public service announcements, so would those work? Are the people that we're trying to, make aware of this, would they be found through radio or television public service announcements? Or what types of media, whether it's Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, all of those things. There are social media platforms we could use, but there's also, whether it's the tribal website or the tribal page or making up our own website page, would that be something that would be significant? And would that be a good strategy to raise the awareness of concrete ideals? So Dimension B is community knowledge of the efforts, the extent to which a community is knowledgeable on the existing efforts. And the goal here again is to raise awareness. The community can do something. The first strategy is present information to the community. Number 2 is initiate events and to present information. So what type of events? Could it be just, PowerPoint events, or is it, are those, limited to hour or lunchtime, brown bag information type settings? And to present the information, how do we present that? We do a PowerPoint all the time? Is that too much, or is it more just like a fair with the information table and people can talk one-on-one? Those are things that we want to know. Number 3 is conduct surveys and interviews about attitudes and perceptions. Now, when we talk about surveys, one of the things when we do surveys is, we hear people that only want to do a hard copy survey, or only want to do a survey where it's on SurveyMonkey, or those are other types of things that we can use to conduct surveys. Or we can mail those out and hope they get returned back. And interviews about attitudes and perceptions. So when we talk about interviews, so who are we interviewing? Besides the previous mentioned interviews that we talked about earlier, are there other people we should be interviewing? Or is it, some of the single parent household, or 2-couple household, or, grandparents raising their kids, or whatever that may be? Who are we talking about when we talk about interviewing? Maybe there's things that we haven't thought about that you have, so that's what we want to hear from you. Lastly is to publish articles and post information. So where would we publish articles? Not everybody does the tribal newsletter. Not everybody, has internet access readily in their home. Some may go to the library. So maybe we post information at the library, at the post office, at the stores. Where do we post that information? So now the dimensions C, E, and F, the scoring was around the same. So this is leadership, the readiness of leaders to support and engage in prevention efforts, community knowledge about the issues, to what extent community members know about and have access to, and resources related to the issue, to what extent local resources are available, such as people, time, money, and space. So the goal here is to raise awareness that the problem or issue exists in this community. With that in mind, the strategy would be to 1, continue one-on-one visits, 2, encourage PPL to assist, 3 is approval and engage local programs to assist in the efforts, and 4 is begin to point out local statistics. 5 is prepare and submit articles on substance use prevention. Now, a lot of times we see articles in the paper and they have a lot of information, and maybe it's too much. Maybe it's less of the concrete information, more about what's going on in our community towards those efforts. But that's what we want to hear from you. Lastly is present information to local groups. When we talk about local groups, so who are the local groups? We have an association with a lot of local groups. However, there are other groups that we might not be aware of. Maybe they're a little bit smaller and maybe informal, but we need to know who those are. If you have any information, you're welcome to share that with us. And if you think it would be interest to them, maybe you can direct them our way. So again, that's what we'd be interested in, and if that would be included in the strategies, that's what we'd want to hear from you. Dimension D is the community climate, the prevailing attitude of the community towards the issue. Again, the goal here would be to raise awareness with concrete ideals. The first strategy would be make one-on-one visits with the community leaders and members. 2 would be visiting existing and established groups to inform them about this issue. 3 is make one-on-one phone calls to friends and potential supporters. So when we talk about that, maybe making one-on-one visits with community members and leaders, is that something people would want to do? Is that something that you would want to do if we did a one-on-one visit? Or if there's people that that would want to do a one-on-one visit, how do we contact them? Maybe they aren't listening to this video or coming to the meetings, but they have a lot to say. So those are things, maybe it's identifying those people in the community. And when we look at that, making one-on-one phone calls to friends and potential supporters, so who is that? That's the question we always try to figure out. How do How do we reach out to people? How do we get that information out there? So comments or suggestions. So one of the things we want to make sure is that people know that they can send their comments and suggestions attention to Abraham Broncho or Sonia Oberle. So we ask that you please contact staff by phone or email, or drop-off box located at our new location found at 271 B Street. One of the things you're going to be entered into is a raffle. Those have to be submitted before 4 p.m. on September 8th. There's 3 chances to win. The winners will be announced at a live meeting set for September 9th, 2020 at 6 p.m. via Zoom. We'll keep you posted on information about how to access that meeting and participate. We want to thank you from the Students for Success staff, and we hope to hear your suggestions, comments, and questions regarding this very important topic.